on the way to the office. It's all of a 5-minute drive. Been doing it for 54 years. One of the good things about this 5-minute drive is that on the way there's a McDonald's, so I'll pick up something.
Good morning. Thank you for choosing McDonald's. Go ahead and order whenever you're ready.
I'll have a sausage McMuffin with egg and cheese.
Anything else?
That's it. Thank you. And I tell my wife, as I shave in the morning, I say either 261, 295, or 317. And she puts that amount in a little cup by me here, and that determines which of 3 breakfasts I get. Okay, 295. There's
How
the
you
2.
doing, sir?
Hey, great. You're on candid camera.
I see. Hello, everybody.
When I'm not feeling quite so prosperous, I might go with the 261, which is 2 sausage patties, and then I put them together and pour myself a Coke. Hi, how are you? 317 is a bacon, egg, and cheese biscuit, but the market's down this morning, so I think I'll pass up the 317 and go with the 295. Grade school where somebody did something for the king, and the king said, "What can I do for you?" And he said, "Well, let's take a chessboard and put 1 kernel of wheat on the first square, and then double it on the second and double it on the third." And the king readily agreed to it, and by the time he figured out what 2 to the 64th amounted to, he was giving away the entire kingdom. So it's a pretty simple concept, but over time, it accomplishes extraordinary things.
Berkshire is an amazing company. It's 4th largest company in the Fortune 500. He is the only person who has ever, from scratch, built a company that is in the top 10 of the Fortune 500.
Well, Berkshire is a holding company of sorts. It owns a large number of separate businesses that operate independently of each other and, to a great extent, from the parent company, Berkshire Hathaway.
What bowl's been red hot? My favorite green bowl. So strong. All right. Well, we're going to get more from you in a second.
We have maybe 70, maybe 80 businesses, and we ask them to behave in a way that doesn't hurt our reputation at Berkshire Hathaway, but they run their own lives. Other people do most of the decorating of the office, so various things come in. Originally, when I moved in 1962, you can see this. I went down to the South Omaha Library, and I think for $1, I got 7 copies of old New York Times from big times like the Panic of 1907. This is one, 1929, obviously. But I wanted to put on the walls days of extreme panic in Wall Street, just as a reminder that anything can happen in this world. I mean, it's instructive art, you can call it.
The investment that you love is China. You just got back from China a few days ago, and you said it blows your mind away,
right,
the way that Eastern China
has
transformed itself. Tell me about that.
Well, where 30 years ago you saw not much, villages, maybe large, extremely large villages, but you saw bicycles, and you now see hundreds of buildings. You see the cranes operating. You see, I mean, it is incredible the transformation that has happened to a country where for hundreds of years nothing happened. I mean, it shows you the power of a system. The Chinese people aren't smarter than they were 50 years ago. They're not working harder. They used to, I mean, stoop labor and, you know, and patties and all. The system now is unleashing their potential. And just like our system has unleashed our potential in this country. I mean, for millennia, people went nowhere in the world. I mean, your great-great-great-great-great-grandchild was going to live the same as you did for many, many centuries. Our country in the last couple hundred years has just unleashed human potential like nothing we've ever seen. The same thing is now happening in China.
Do you have as much faith, Warren, in the Chinese system as you do in the American system?
Well, I don't know the Chinese system. I'm a hometown guy, so I love the American system. It has all kinds of faults with it and everything else. But basically, we don't achieve it, but we believe in equality of opportunity, and we believe in a rule of law, and we believe in a market system. We believe in gender equality and all that. Like I say, it's never perfect, but we're moving, and we're always moving in the right direction over time. We have the right goals in this country, and it's proven itself. I don't know as much about the Chinese economy. I will say this: what I saw over there was government, management, and labor, all with a common goal and with a zeal and a passion for achieving that goal. And when you get those three forces operating together, and you get people that are hungry to do things, a lot's going to get done. I mean, it is astounding what's happening.
Fascinating. Watch out. Look what's ahead.
Well, but it's not a zero-sum game. It's not. That's very.
Not watch out in that way.
Yeah. No, watch the movie. Yeah, it'll be interesting.
Looking at what the administration and Treasury Secretary Geithner have had to say about China's currency policy, it has gotten a lot more aggressive in terms of the language used towards China. What's your take on how China should act? They have said that they will float their currency. There's a difference between words and actions.
Yeah. Well, it's very difficult to get into discussions about currency because our currency is fluctuating against 200 currencies around the world, and we're running trade deficits of a significant nature with Canada, whose currency has strengthened, or Mexico or Germany and all that sort of thing. I'll let the two governments sort that out. I will say this, though. I think it's a mistake for China to think they can push the United States around, or for the United States to think they can push China around. You have two superpowers developing in every sense, and over time we're going to work. We're going to work out things. I mean, it's the nature. Both sides will realize that, despite tensions, despite disagreements, that we have a common interest in a world that's prosperous for both of us, and a world that's peaceful for both of us. But there'll be lots of tensions with the Chinese over time. The American people, they're unhappy now. They're sour to some degree. I don't blame them. I mean, they either have or know people that have lost their job. They either have or know people that have lost their home. I mean, and it isn't their fault. I mean, it is not that they've done anything terrible. So they're sour, and they got three places to blame: government, Wall Street, and China. and you can sort of take your pick depending on how you feel. But that's going to.
I think the president's action on steel probably had something to do with the timing of the decline, but I don't think it was the factor which determined the amount of the decline. For some time, stocks have been rising at rather rapid rates. Corporate earnings have not been rising. Dividends have not been increasing, and it's not to be unexpected that perhaps a correction of some of those unusual factors on the upside might occur on the downside.
Well, some observers from time to time say that the stock market is a forecaster of events to come. Can you predict, or would you care to take a look at what you think this might be forecasting, the decline?
The stock market has been a good forecaster from time to time in the past. It also has been a rather poor forecaster occasionally. For example, the last 4 or 5 years, the stock market has been booming along and presumably forecasting better business, which has really not materialized. Corporate profits are not any better than they were 5 years ago, but stock prices are 50% higher or thereabouts. So maybe the stock market is really correcting a previous incorrect forecast this time rather than making a new correct one.
Well, in a nutshell, Mr. Buffett, can you give us your opinion of just exactly what happened, what caused it?
Well, there was undoubtedly some forced selling the week when the stock market hit the news. The previous week, prices had declined about 6% for the week on average, and there was some stock that was forced upon the market both by margin calls from brokers and some that was forced out by improperly secured bank loans. And this in turn set up a self-generating mechanism on the downside for a while, which we may have seen the last of and which we may not have seen the last of.
The important thing is to be able to define which ones you can come to an intelligent decision on and which ones are beyond your capacity to evaluate. You don't have to be right about thousands and thousands and thousands of companies. You only have to be right about a couple. I met Bill Gates on July 5th, 1991. We were out in Seattle, and Bill said, "You've got to have a computer."
And I said, why? And he said, well, he said, you can do your income tax on it. I said, I don't have any income. Berkshire doesn't pay a dividend. He said, well, you can keep track of your portfolio. And I said, I only have one stock. I said, I mean, and he says, it's going to change everything. And I said, well, will it change whether people chew gum? And he said, well, probably not. And I said, well, will it change what kind of gum they chew? And not. And I said, well, then I'll stick to chewing gum and you stick to computers, you know. I don't have to understand all kinds of business. There's all kinds of business I don't understand. But there's thousands of opportunities there. I did understand the Bank of America, you know, and I'll be able, I'm able to do that. I'm able to understand some given percentage. But Ted Williams wrote a book called The Science of Hitting. And in The Science of Hitting, he's got a diagram, shows him at the plate. And he's got the strike zone divided into 77 squares, each the size of a baseball. And he says, if I only swing at pitches in my sweet zone, which he shows there, and he has what his batting average would be, which is 400. If he had to swing at low outside pitches, but still in the strike zone, his average would be 230. He said the most important thing in hitting is waiting for the right pitch. Now, he was at a disadvantage because if the count was 0-2 or 1-2 or so on, even if that ball was down where he was only going to bat 230, he had to swing at it. In investing, there's no called strikes. People can throw Microsoft at me and, you know, you name it, any stock, General Motors, and I don't have to swing. And nobody's going to call me out on called strikes. I only get a strike called if I swing at a pitch and miss. So I can wait there and look at thousands of companies day after day, and only when I see something I understand and when I like the price at which it's selling, then if I swing, if I hit it, fine. If I miss it, it's a strike. But it's an enormously advantageous game. And it's a terrible mistake to think you have to have an opinion on everything. You only have to have an opinion on a few things. In fact, I've told students, if when they got out of school, they got a punch card with 20 punches on it, and that's all the investment decisions they got to make in their entire life, they would get very rich because they would think very hard about each one. And you don't need 20 right decisions to get very rich. You know, 4 or 5 will probably do it over time. So I don't worry too much about the things I don't understand. If you understand some of these businesses that are coming along and can spot things on, if you can spot on Amazon, for example, I mean, it's a tremendous accomplishment what Jeff Bezos has done. And I tip my hat to him. He's a wonderful businessman. He's a good guy, too. But could I have anticipated that he would be the success and 10 others wouldn't be? I'm not good enough to do that. But fortunately, I don't have to. You know, I don't have to form an opinion on Amazon. And I did form an opinion on the Bank of America, and I formed an opinion on Coca-Cola. I mean, Coca-Cola's been around since 1886. There's 1.8 billion 8-ounce servings of Coca-Cola products sold every day. Now, if you take 1 penny and get 1 penny extra, that's $18 million a day. And 18 million times 365 is 7 billion, 3 less 730 billion, or $6,570,000,000. So annually, $6,570,000,000 from 1 penny. Do you think Coca-Cola is worth a penny more than, you know, Joe's Cola? I think so. So, you know, and I've got about 127 years of history that would indicate it. So those are the kind of decisions I like to make. And you may have an entirely different field of expertise than I would have, and probably much more up to date in terms of the kind of businesses that we're seeing evolve. And you can get very rich if you just understand a few of them and understand their future. But
well, I won't comment on the 3 companies that you've named, but in general terms, unless you find the prices of a great company really offensive, if you feel you've identified it, and by definition, a great company is one that's going to remain great for 30 years. If it's going to be a great company for 3 years, you know, it ain't a great company. I mean, so you really want to go along with the idea of something that if you were going to take a trip for 20 years, you wouldn't feel bad leaving the money in with no orders with your broker and no power of attorney or anything, and you just go on the trip and you know you come back and it's going to be a terribly strong company. I think it's better just to own them. I mean, you know, we could
we could attempt to buy and sell some of the things that we own that we think are fine businesses, but they're too hard to find. I mean, we found See's Candy in 1972, where we find here and there we get the opportunity to do something, but they're too hard to find. So to sit there and hope that you buy them in the throes of some panic, you know, that you sort of take the attitude of a mortician, you know, waiting for a flu epidemic or something. I mean, I'm not sure that I'm not sure will be a great technique. I mean, it may be great if you inherit it. You know, Paul Getty inherited the money at the bottom in '32. I mean, he didn't inherit it exactly. He talked his mother out of it, but yeah. It's true, actually.
Close enough.
Yeah, close enough, right? But he benefited enormously by having access to a lot of cash in the early 30s that he didn't have access to in the late 20s, and so you can get some accidents like that. But that's a lot to count on, and you know, if you start with the Dow at X and you think it's too high, you know, when it goes to 90% of X, do you buy? Well, if it does and it goes to 50% of X, it gets, you know, you never get the benefit of those extremes anyway, unless you just come into some accidental sum of money at some time. So I think the main thing to do is find wonderful businesses. Is Phil Carre here? We got the world. Yeah, there's the hero of investing. Phil, would you stand up? Phil is 99. He wrote a book on investing in 1924. Phil has done awfully well by finding businesses he likes and sticking with them and not worrying too much about what they do day to day. There's going to be I think there's going to be an article in the Wall Street Journal about Phil on May 28th, and I advise you all to read it. You'll probably learn a lot more with him by coming to this meeting. But it's that approach of buying businesses. I mean, let's just say there was no stock market, and the owner of the best business in whatever your hometown is came to you and said, "Look, you know, my brother just died, and he owned 20% of the business, and I want somebody to go in with me to buy that 20%. And the price looks a little high, maybe, but this is what I think I can get for it. You know, do you want to buy in?" You know, I think if you like the business and you like the person who's coming to you and the price sounds reasonable, and you really know the business, I think probably the thing to do is to take it and don't worry about how it's quoted. And it won't be quoted tomorrow or next week or next month. You know, I think people's investment would be more intelligent if stocks were quoted about once a year, but it isn't going to happen that way. So, and if you happen to come into some added money at some time when something dramatic has happened, I mean, we did well back in 1964 because American Express ran into a crook. You know, we did well in 1976 because Geico's managers and auditors didn't know what the loss reserve should have been the previous couple of years. So we've had our share of flu epidemics, but you don't want to spend your life waiting around for them.
Well, I learned to take orders, and which is not a bad trait to acquire. And but I had a lot of fun. I mean, basically, it was anytime you make a lot of good, long friendships. I mean, that's important in life. And there was something about the spirit of a company. I mean, people that you did things with, and slept in the same barracks and everything. I mean, that actually has a really good effect on you. You learn about people in all different kinds of walks of life. We had this really epic flood in 1952 here in Omaha. I mean, and for weeks almost, the question was whether the levees would hold and all of that. And there was sandbagging going on. And I was going to get married on April 19th, Saturday. And you know, some people came in from out of town, and I had ushers lined up, and they all kidded me because they said, you know, you'll probably have to get activated, and we'll take your place on the honeymoon. And so when Saturday came, and I got a phone call at noon, and the wedding was at 3. When I got this call at noon, and I picked up the phone, and the boys said, we're being activated. Captain Murphy said, what time are you getting married? I said, 3 o'clock. He said, well, then we've been activated, and you can be at the Armory at 5 or 5:30 or something like that. Presumably the duty would last for quite a while. I mean, the flood was really something, and the Guard did a lot of work patrolling. So you can imagine what I thought. And then it wasn't too much later, I can't remember exactly when, but maybe it was a half an hour later, I pick up the phone for the first time. He said, Corporal Buffett, and I said, yes, sir. And he said, this is General Wood, who was commanding general, and who I'd never met, or he was a mythical character. And he said, I'm countermanding Captain Murphy's order. He said, go and have a big time. And that was a great moment in my life. I like to think it was a great moment in my bride's life, too, but the next day in the paper, they had a little article about it, of course. It's a great experience, and I think whether it's a career for you or whether it's, you know, whether it's reserve service or something of the sort, you're going to make a lot of good friends. You're going to learn a lot, and you know, I think that you ought to be very proud of what you're doing.